All right, so, Times Person of the Year, right? 2024.
Yeah.
We all saw it, I think. Donald Trump, the cover.
Oh, yeah.
And that very iconic photo by Platon.
Platon, yeah.
Well, today we're going to do a deep dive on that image and really kind of get behind the scenes of it.
Okay.
And we're using an article straight from Time itself to do so.
All right, cool.
So this is interesting right off the bat.
Yeah.
Platon, he's not just some photographer.
No, he's not.
He's done over 20 Time covers.
Yeah.
And tons and tons of world leaders.
It's really like getting a history lesson through his lens, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
Platon talks about using a very simple wooden apple box for many of his photo shoots.
Interesting.
And get this, Barack Obama,
Wow.
Muammar Gaddafi,
Wow.
Vladimir Putin.
Oh, my goodness.
They've all sat on the same box.
That's amazing.
Talk about a piece of furniture with stories to tell.
Yeah, it really is like this unassuming object, right?
Right.
It becomes the shared point of contact for all these figures with so much power and influence.
Right.
It's kind of funny to think about.
Right.
Regardless of their ideology or their power, they're all occupying the same space.
It really does.
In a very literal way.
Yeah, and it makes you think about the visual representation of power, right?
Right.
And how Platon is almost stripping that bare a little bit and kind of presenting all of these world leaders and figures on a level playing field in a way.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like there's a deliberate choice to expose kind of the constructed nature of power.
Right.
Because when you put them on this really simple everyday object, it kind of allows us to see them as human beings.
Right.
They're engaged in this performance of power.
Right.
They're not just these untouchable figures.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And it's not just the apple box.
Right.
He also uses other symbols, like recurring symbols in his photography, like the American flag. And he's photographed everyone from Pamela Anderson to Muhammad Ali to Edward Snowden with it.
Okay.
So the flag becomes a really interesting element in these portraits.
Yeah, what is he trying to say? Is it patriotism? Is it protest? Or is it something else entirely? I think it really depends on the subject.
It does.
It changes. And that ambiguity, I think that's what's so interesting, is that it really forces the viewer to confront their own assumptions about what that symbolizes.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Trump, right?
Yep.
Because this is obviously about him.
Right.
Platon actually encountered him 22 years before this Time shoot.
Wow.
And even back then, he said that Trump had this undeniable charisma and really understood how to use the media.
Interesting.
In fact, Trump actually included photos from this early encounter in one of his books.
Wow, he was thinking ahead.
He was.
Yeah.
So years later, fast forward to the 2024 Time shoot at Mar-a-Lago.
Okay.
And Platon describes this 3-hour delay.
Oh, my God.
Before Trump finally arrives, surrounded by his entourage, of course.
Of course, yeah. You can almost picture the scene, right?
Right.
It's very calculated. It's a performance.
It is.
Not just for the camera, but for anyone who's present.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
As Platon and his team are setting up, they hear music blasting.
Oh, sure.
Trump's personal playlist.
Interesting.
And the range is kind of wild.
Okay, what is it?
You've got Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong,
Classic.
Parley Simon, Sinead O'Connor,
Okay.
Michael Jackson, even ABBA.
Wow, that's a range. That's quite the mix.
Yeah, it is quite the mix. What do you make of that?
Well, it's fascinating, right? Because on the one hand, you have these iconic figures, Sinatra, Armstrong, evoking a sense of like classic American power and legacy.
Right.
And then you have artists like Sinead O'Connor, who's known for her protest music.
Right.
So it's almost subversive in a way.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what is he trying to convey with this mix, right?
It does. And so Platon actually asked him about the playlist.
Oh, wow, good.
And Trump said, they are all my favorite songs.
Right.
I chose every one of them, 2,000 in all.
Wow.
I chose them for a reason.
So it wasn't just background music.
It wasn't.
It was a deliberate choice.
It was.
Which makes you wonder, is it calculated?
Yeah.
To project a certain image? Or is it actually just a reflection of his taste? Maybe it's a bit of both.
Right. And it definitely adds another layer to this whole photo shoot.
It does.
Then, of course, comes the moment where Platon captures Trump with the American flag.
Okay.
And it's very reminiscent, of course, of when Trump kissed the flag at CPAC.
Yeah, and here the symbolism is really potent.
Right.
You have that flag draped over his shoulder, almost like a mantle.
Right.
It could be interpreted as this symbol of his claim to American power.
Right.
Exceptionalism.
Right.
But it's interesting because during the shoot, he says, we are going to fix it. And so juxtaposing that with the image, it kind of hints that there's this perceived brokenness.
Right.
That America needs to be fixed according to his vision.
Right.
It's complex.
It's a powerful image.
It is.
And I think it really encapsulates what Platon aims to do with his photography, right? To provoke thought about a subject's place in history.
Exactly.
So what might this particular image say about Trump's relationship with America?
Right.
With his vision for the country?
Yeah, it's complex. The photo doesn't give you a simple answer.
It doesn't.
But it definitely captures a moment in time, right?
It does.
A snapshot of a leader and a nation at a crossroads, and that's what makes it so compelling.
Yeah.
It really invites us to analyze it, to question, and to draw our own conclusions.
Absolutely. And we've only just scratched the surface here.
Right.
There's so much more to unpack.
Indeed. Let's dive deeper into this photo shoot.
Right.
And explore what its lasting impact might be.
Yeah. It's fascinating how Platon uses these simple elements, the apple box, the flag, to create these really layered and thought-provoking images.
Well, he has a way, I think, of stripping away the artifice, the pomp and circumstance that often surrounds powerful figures.
Yeah.
And by presenting them with these everyday objects, it humanizes them in a way.
It does.
And it encourages us to question our perceptions of authority.
It makes you wonder how we construct narratives around these individuals, right?
Yeah.
And how photography can be used to shape public opinion.
Absolutely.
Sometimes without us even realizing it.
Yeah, these images aren't just these passive records of an event, They're actively participating in the construction of meaning, historical memory.
Thinking back to the Trump photo shoot.
Yeah.
Platon mentioned how Trump's power dominated the room.
Oh, wow.
When he arrived.
That's interesting how power can manifest physically and emotionally, right? It's palpable.
Yeah.
It creates this presence that commands attention.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's unique to Trump, though.
Right.
I mean, Platon has probably witnessed similar displays of power dynamics from many of the leaders he's photographed.
Right. Is it a conscious projection?
Yeah.
Or is it something more innate?
Right.
Some natural aura that some leaders possess.
I mean, there's a whole field of study dedicated to the psychology of power and leadership, nonverbal cues, body language, the use of space.
Right.
It all plays a role.
It all contributes.
In how power is perceived and projected.
And it's not just about dominance, right?
Right.
There's also an element of charisma.
Totally.
Persuasion.
Yeah.
That seems to be kind of intertwined with power as well.
Absolutely. Charisma can be a powerful tool.
Right.
Especially when it comes to leadership.
Right.
It's the ability to inspire.
Right.
To connect with people.
Right.
And to create a narrative that resonates.
Yeah. That brings us back to the music. Right.
That was playing during the photo shoot.
Yeah.
That eclectic mix on Trump's playlist.
Yes.
Were those song choices a way of projecting charisma, do you think?
It's possible. Think about some of the titles,
Right.
My Way.
Right.
The Winner Takes It All.
Yeah.
These songs speak to a certain self-assuredness.
Right.
Belief in one's own destiny.
It's almost as if he's curating his own legacy through those song choices.
That's a fascinating observation, yeah.
Right.
Leaders often try to shape their legacy.
Yeah.
And music can definitely be a tool for that.
It makes me wonder how much of this is calculated.
Right.
How much is part of a carefully crafted persona versus how much is genuine self-expression?
That's the question we should always be asking, I think.
Right.
Especially in today's media landscape, where image and perception are so carefully controlled. It's clear that Trump, even early on, really understood the power of media and how to utilize it to his advantage.
Absolutely. He's a master of image making, no doubt.
Right.
He knows how to craft a persona that resonates with the target audience.
And Platon captured that so effectively in this final image with Trump and the American flag.
Right.
We discussed its potential interpretations.
Yeah.
But what strikes me is how a single object can be so multi-layered, so open to interpretation.
It's an incredibly potent symbol, the American flag.
Right.
It evokes patriotism, unity, strength, but it can also be seen as a symbol of nationalism, division, even exclusion.
It's fascinating how the same image can evoke such different reactions.
It is.
Interpretations.
It is, yeah. It depends on who's viewing it.
Depending on who's viewing it.
That's the power of symbols, isn't it?
It is.
They don't have fixed meanings. Their meanings are often shaped by the viewer's own experiences.
Right.
Beliefs, biases.
So when we look at this image of Trump with the flag, we're not just seeing a photograph, are we? We're seeing a reflection of our own individual perceptions and beliefs.
Exactly. And that's what makes this image so compelling.
Right.
It's not just a snapshot of a moment in time.
Right.
It's a starting point for a conversation.
Right.
A catalyst for deeper reflection.
It's a snapshot of a moment in time that will be debated and dissected
Absolutely.
for years to come, I imagine.
And that's precisely what makes photography so powerful.
Wow.
It has the ability to spark conversations, to challenge our assumptions,
Yeah.
and to make us think critically about the world around us.
It's like a mirror,
Yeah.
reflecting our own biases and beliefs back at us.
And sometimes the most insightful reflections are the ones that make us uncomfortable, the ones that force us to confront perspectives that are different from our own.
This has been quite a deep dive.
It has.
Exploring the complexities of power, the role of media, and the enduring power of imagery.
Absolutely.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
There's always more to learn,
Right.
more to analyze, more to question. We could keep unpacking this for hours.
What stands out to you from this exploration of Trump's time cover?
Yeah.
What will you carry with you from our conversation today?
Yeah, it's true. We could spend hours dissecting just this one photograph.
Right.
But it makes you realize that this kind of analysis isn't just limited to, political figures or time covers.
Right.
Right. We encounter these kinds of visual messages everywhere.
Everywhere we go. You're right. Think about advertising, social media, even the photos we take ourselves.
Absolutely.
They're all conveying messages, sometimes intentionally, sometimes subconsciously.
Exactly. We're constantly being bombarded with visual information.
Right.
And it's so important to develop a critical eye, to start seeing the subtext, the unspoken narratives that are embedded within these images.
Even something as simple as a selfie can be carefully curated.
Yeah.
Right? To project a certain image.
Totally.
To shape how we're perceived online.
It's fascinating how we've all become curators of our own image in a way.
Right.
We choose the angles, the filters, the captions,
Yeah.
all to present this specific version of ourselves.
Right. And it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
It's about being conscious of the choices we're making.
Absolutely.
Being aware of the impact that those choices have on how others perceive us.
I agree. Visual communication is a powerful tool.
It is.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for, less than good purposes.
Right.
The key is to use it thoughtfully.
Yeah.
With intention and with an understanding of its potential impact.
And that brings us back to Platon's work.
Right.
What do you think makes his photography so effective at conveying these complex ideas, these layers of meaning?
Well, I think it's his ability to really capture the essence of his subjects. He doesn't just photograph their outward appearance.
Right.
He goes deeper. He reveals something about their inner world.
Right.
Their humanity.
Right. Even their vulnerabilities.
And he manages to capture that humanity.
Yeah.
Even when he's photographing some of the most powerful and sometimes intimidating figures in the world.
Yeah. It's a rare skill.
It is.
And it's what makes his work so compelling.
Right.
It reminds us that even those who wield immense power are still, at their core, human beings.
Right.
They have complexities, contradictions, vulnerabilities, just like the rest of us.
It's a humbling reminder that we all too often forget.
We do.
It's easy to get caught up in the narratives that are built around these people.
Yeah.
Right. To see them as larger-than-life figures.
Absolutely.
But Platon really brings it back down to earth.
He does, that humanity is always there, lurking beneath the surface.
So as we wrap up this deep dive today, I hope this conversation encourages you to look closer, to think critically, and to question the visual messages you encounter.
Next time you see a photograph.
Whether it's a news image, an advertisement, a post on social media, take a moment to consider the context. Ask yourself, what's the message here? Who benefits from this image? What might I be missing?
And don't be afraid to question your own assumptions. Sometimes the most insightful discoveries come from challenging our own perspectives and being open to new interpretations.
Remember, every image tells a story.
Yeah.
But it's up to us to decipher that story, to uncover the layers of meaning. And to understand how those images shape our understanding of the world.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
It has.
And we could go on and on.
We could.
But we'll leave it there for today.
I think that's a good place to stop.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.